On the searing morning of August 2nd, 216 BCE, the course of the ancient world teetered on the brink of change on a dusty plain in southeastern Italy, near the barely remembered village of Cannae. Two monumental armies were poised to engage in what would become the deadliest encounter of Roman history. On one side, the formidable legions of the Roman Republic fielded their largest military assembly to date, numbering over 80,000 battle-ready men clad in glistening bronze armor, their spirits bolstered by a fervent belief in their destiny. Opposing them stood Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian commander whose very name had become synonymous with fear across the Italian landscape. The events that unfolded that fateful day would transcend the battleground. They would illustrate an unparalleled display of military ingenuity that left the Roman legions decimated and bleeding, burdened by losses so immense that scholars still grapple with the magnitude of the devastation. This is the tale of Cannae, where tactical brilliance clashed with Roman defiance, and where a single-man's strategic vision transformed a numerical disadvantage into one of the most complete military decimations in history. The path to Cannae was paved not by clashing swords but by the relentless gears of political ambition and tactical errors. By the summer of 216 BCE, Hannibal had been ravaging Italy for 2 years, and the remnants of Roman pride were overwhelmed by memories of defeat. With an army comprised of Carthaginian, Spanish, Gallic, and Numidian troops, Hannibal was leaving a bloody trail through the heart of Roman territory. The ghosts of the battles at the Trebia and Lake Trasimene still haunted Roman dreams at Trebia. Hannibal had cunningly lured an entire Roman army into a lethal ambush, slaughtering them in the frigid waters of the river. At Lake Trasimene, he had orchestrated one of the largest ambushes in military history, annihilating another Roman consular army shrouded in the morning mists. In the aftermath of these two engagements, approximately 50,000 Roman soldiers, both seasoned veterans and inexperienced recruits, had fallen, leaving scars on the Roman psyche that would take generations to mend. Yet the Romans were never a people easily subdued. Under the steady leadership of Quintus Fabius Maximus, appointed dictator during Rome's dire crisis, they adopted a strategy of patience and attrition. Fabius refrained from giving Hannibal the large-scale engagement he lusted after. Instead, he shadowed the Carthaginian forces, disrupting supply lines while avoiding direct confrontation. This strategy earned him the derogatory title of Conctator, the delayer. While it conserved the lives of Roman soldiers, it did little to quench the desire for action that burned within the hearts of the Roman populace. Raised on tales of conquest and glory, the sight of their ravaged countryside, while their armies retreated, became unbearable. The Roman spirit clamored for vengeance, for retribution, for blood. As seasons changed and Hannibal continued his unrelenting campaign through southern Italy, Roman patience finally shattered. The elections of that summer ushered into new consuls, who embodied the conflicting philosophies that bled into Roman military strategy. Lucius Aemilius Paulus, hailing from a patrician lineage steeped in military tradition, understood the value of caution in confronting Hannibal's genius. He had studied the Carthaginian methods and recognized the peril of underestimating such a strategic mastermind. However, his co-consul, Gnaeus Cerilius Geminus, represented a voice of popular outrage, a plebeian who had clawed his way to power through political shrewdness rather than military acumen. Geminus promised the Roman crowd what they fervently longed to hear. He would bring the fight to Hannibal, crush the barbarian invader through sheer force, and restore Roman honor with iron. Swayed by the tide of popular demand, the Senate made a fateful decision that would haunt them for generations. They authorized the raising of 8 full legions, double the typical consular army, along with an equal number of allied troops. Never before had Rome mustered such a colossal force. As the army marched north toward Hannibal, it boasted over 80,000 men, the largest military force the Republic had ever gathered. It stood not just as a deployment of soldiers, but as a declaration in bronze and iron that Rome's patience had frayed thin, and her wrath was fierce. However, mere numbers do not guarantee victory. The Roman army, pushing through the sweltering Italian summer towards destiny, bore within it the seeds of its own destruction. Many legionaries were hastily conscripted and woefully untrained. The catastrophic losses at Trebia and Trasimene had compelled Rome to lower its recruitment standards, bringing in men lacking the martial experience that had once defined the legions. Property requirements were discarded amid the desperate scramble for manpower, meaning that many soldiers had never wielded a sword before donning their first mail shirt. These were not the seasoned heroes who had conquered Gaul and pacified the Mediterranean, but rather farmers and merchants, thrust into the furnace of war with scant training. Even more perilous than the inexperience of the soldiers was the divided command that marked the Roman expedition. Following traditional military practice, the two consuls alternated daily command of the army, a system that worked reasonably well in smaller campaigns, but proved catastrophic when facing an adversary of Hannibal's caliber. Paulus advocated for caution, aiming to engage Hannibal only under favorable conditions, while Geminissa, man burning with impatience, was eager to confront the Carthaginian in battle and seize the glory. This fundamental disagreement sowed confusion and paralysis in purpose that Hannibal would exploit mercilessly. Meanwhile, the Carthaginian general was orchestrating an exquisite masterpiece of strategic manipulation. As the Romans debated and delayed, in the spring of 216, Hannibal seized the fortress of Cannae, crucial logistics hub controlling grain supplies for the region. This acquisition was not simply tactical, it was psychological. By capturing Cannae, Hannibal demonstrated his capacity to strike anywhere, control vital territories, and jeopardize Rome's ability to sustain itself and its alliances. The message was clear. Rome could either advance to battle on his terms or watch helplessly as their empire fractured piece by piece. The terrain chosen by Hannibal for his trap was a study in simplicity and effectiveness. The wide plains surrounding Cannae provided ample space for maneuver, a vital advantage for an army that thrived on movement and tactical flexibility. The Alpheus River served as a natural anchor for defensive positions while constraining the Romans' deployment choices. The setting sun would create blinding glare for the Romans as they advanced, their view obstructed by the hot, swirling dust stoked by the fiery August winds. Every environmental factor had been meticulously calculated, every detail planned with the precision of an artist constructing his magnum opus. As the Roman army approached Cannae in late July, they confronted a formidable foe who appeared almost eager for combat. Hannibal's multi-ethnic warriors, having campaigned in Italy for 2 years, were far from home and driven by the promise of glory and plunder. The Roman deployment reflected Varro's philosophy of decisively overwhelming force, executed with brutal simplicity. The 8 legions, organized in the traditional formation, were densely packed more tightly than customary. Where Roman doctrine typically advocated for flexible maniples capable of adapting to battlefield dynamics, Varro chose to create a massive battering ram of human power. The hastily trained recruits were shoulder to shoulder next to the veterans, their lack of experience concealed by their considerable numbers. On the flanks, Roman and allied cavalry took their positions, outnumbered by their Carthaginian counterparts. Yet confident they could hold the line long enough for infantry to break through Hannibal's center. The plan encapsulated Roman military philosophy at its most elementary: advance, engage, and crush the adversary using superior numbers and discipline. Across the expanse, Hannibal observed the Roman formations with the keen sight of a master craftsman assessing raw materials. What the Romans interpreted as overwhelming strength, he discerned as perilous rigidity. Their tightly packed ranks might unleash a significant initial push, but they would sacrifice the adaptability that had made the legions legendary. Once engaged, their compressed formations would hamper maneuvering and limit tactical opportunism. More critically, their very numbers would become liabilities should Hannibal's trap spring. The crush of bodies would obstruct any orderly retreat or repositioning. Carthaginian formation itself was carefully crafted. At first glance, it seemed conventional, with infantry in the center, cavalry on the sides, and reserves at the ready. Yet to the careful observer, every detail served Hannibal's overarching design. In the center, he positioned his Gallic and Spanish warriors, fierce fighters equipped with lighter weapons and armor. This appeared prudent, signaling to the Romans that Hannibal was placing his most expendable troops at the forefront. However, his true genius lay in knowing that these warriors, while brave, were capable of executing a controlled fighting withdrawal, luring the Romans deeper into his trap. Concealed behind this lighter infantry were Hannibal's elite, African veterans warriors who had stood by his side since the siege of Saguntum. Armed with the finest equipment, Many war-captured Roman mail and shields, marking them as seasoned fighters. They would remain hidden from the Romans until the right moment, poised to unleash their devastating assault on the advancing legions. Their discipline and unwavering trust in Hannibal's command granted them the assurance that when the signal was given, they would act with lethal precision. One of the most critical components of Hannibal's plan lay with his cavalry. On the left flank, Hasdrubal commanded heavy Carthaginian and Spanish horsemen, mounted on muscular steeds and wielding long spears expertly adapted for shock tactics. These cavalrymen had honed their skills within the brutal realm of Iberian warfare, where mounted combat flourished as an art form. On the right flank, the light Numidian cavalry awaited with barely contained energy, their nimble horses swaying beneath riders born and bred for combat. These men fought not for mere gold or glory, but for the sheer ecstasy of conflict. Their javelins and short swords an extension of their will. As the sun rose higher, transforming the heat into an almost unbearable force, both armies completed their final preparations. The Romans engaged in their traditional sacrifices, scrutinizing the entrails of sacred animals for signs of favorable outcomes. The augurs proclaimed positive omens, though whether stemming from genuine religious belief or political pressure remains unclear. Offerings were made to Mars, the god of war, and to Jupiter, protector of Rome, as soldiers meticulously checked their equipment one last time. Sword belts were readjusted, shields fine-tuned, and armor straps secured in effort that for many would be their last ritual before facing the specter of imminent death. In stark contrast, Hannibal moved through the Carthaginian ranks not as a tyrant, but as a leader stirring the souls of his men. With magnetic charisma, he implored them to remember the countless victories they had claimed together, the bond they shared through pain and triumph, and the riches awaiting them should they emerge victorious. In that tense air, a palpable current of belief surged through the Carthaginian ranks. They understood that what lay ahead would not merely be a battle for survival, but a chance to etch their names into the annals of history itself. As the heat continued to rise overhead, the two armies more than merely adversaries but embodiments of two clashing civilizations, prepared to engage in a confrontation that would not only shift the balance of power, but redefine how warfare was waged for centuries to come. Their confidence radiated as they prepared to face the daunting Roman legions. Many in Hannibal's ranks wore Roman armor and carried weapons taken from fallen enemies at previous victories. They had followed their commander across treacherous mountains and through numerous adversities, transformed by his ability to turn seemingly impossible situations into stunning triumphs. When Hannibal told them one last victory awaited, promising untold riches and a path back to their homelands, they believed him without hesitance. Thus, the stage was set for one of history's greatest tactical lessons in warfare. Rome believed that overwhelming numbers would eradicate their tormentor. In response, Hannibal had devised a brilliant counter-strategy, illustrating that intellect and experience could surpass sheer numbers and unwarranted bravado. As the two armies readied themselves to collide on the dusty plain of Cannae, neither side anticipated that they were on the verge of a battle that would alter the very fabric of military strategy, as it was then understood. As the morning sun rose on the 2nd of August, 216 BCE, a blaring heat enveloped the plain, pressing down upon the soldiers like an inexorable weight of fate. 80,000 Roman troops stirred in their camps, the sound of clashing bronze and iron reverberating through their ranks as they prepared for what many believed would be the war's decisive confrontation. Standard-bearers unfurled the golden eagles of their legions, symbols of their indomitable pride, while centurions barked orders that had echoed across 100 battlefields of the Mediterranean. Beneath this facade of confidence lay an undercurrent of tension, palpable even to the most seasoned warriors. On that fateful day, Consul Varro was to command, and the fire of his aggressive spirit coursed through the ranks. He moved among the legions, instilling promises of glory and vengeance, while reminding them of their numerical superiority over the enemy. The Carthaginians, he declared, were merely a ragtag band of mercenaries far from their homeland, weakened by prolonged campaigning. Today, he proclaimed, the might of Roman steel would put an end to Hannibal's reign of terror. Paulus, observing Varro's confidence with growing trepidation, recognized the dangerous arrogance that had already been exploited by Hannibal at Trebia and Trasimene. Yet, Roman tradition dictated that he must support his colleague's decision, even as caution and instinct screamed warnings that went unheeded. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to support our work and never miss an upload. Like this video, drop a comment, and share it with others to show your support and help us grow this historical community.